For decades, millions of fans believed they knew Cobra Commander. The cartoon gave us a bumbling villain who always lost. But Larry Hama buried something in the pages of the comics. A story so dark that television never had the courage to adapt it. A story involving his own son. And once you learn the price that boy paid, you'll realize that the darkest thing Cobra Commander ever did wasn't against the Joes. It happened inside his own home. Billy grew up in Springfield. On the surface, it looked like an ordinary American town. But beneath that small-town image was one of Cobra's largest operations. Everyone there served the organization in one way or another, and Billy grew up watching it all firsthand. The difference was that everyone else had chosen that life. Billy hadn't. He was born into it. And as he got older, he began to see something many people around him refused to acknowledge. The man responsible for everything happening in Springfield was his own father. And somewhere along the way, Billy came to a devastating conclusion. The world would be better off without Cobra Commander. And that's when the Baroness and Major Blood stepped in. They didn't find an enemy from the outside. They found a teenager on the inside who had already arrived, all on his own, at the very same conclusion they had. The difference was that they had experience, training, and a plan. They recruited Billy. They spent months getting him ready. And in issue number 33, Billy showed up at a Cobra rally wearing a Cobra youth uniform, holding a bouquet of flowers, and a pistol hidden inside that bouquet. Storm Shadow saw the movement before it happened. Destro grabbed Billy's arm at the last second. The shot went wide, and Cobra Commander, standing on a stage in front of thousands, demanded to know who this teenager was. Destro looked at him. "This is your son." Cobra Commander recognized the face, and he put his own son on trial. But here's what the animated series could never show you. The brainwave scanner wasn't just an interrogation device. It was one of Cobra's most feared weapons, a machine designed to dig through a person's mind, tear memories to the surface, and expose secrets they never intended to reveal. And now, Billy was strapped into it. Officially, this wasn't a trial. It was an investigation. But as Billy sat restrained in front of Cobra's leadership, the difference between an investigation and a conviction was getting harder to see. Cobra Commander was watching. Destro was there. Baroness was there. Everyone wanted the same answer. Who put Billy up to this? The truth was simple. Baroness and Major Blood had recruited him. They had found an angry teenager, pointed him toward a target, and turned that anger into an assassination attempt. But when the machine began pulling his memories apart, Billy did something nobody expected. He refused to give them up. Memory after memory flashed across the screen. Secret meetings, private conversations, months of planning. Yet Billy kept insisting he had acted alone. He took the blame on himself and protected the very people who had used him. And while most of the room saw nothing more than another interrogation, one man saw something completely different. Storm Shadow. He had spent years inside Cobra, years watching people betray each other the moment things went bad. But Billy wasn't doing that. The kid had been manipulated. He'd been used. And even then, he refused to turn on anyone. To Storm Shadow, that wasn't weakness. It was loyalty. And in that moment, something changed. For the first time in a long time, his loyalty wasn't to Cobra. It was to Billy. Not long afterward, Storm Shadow made a decision that would brand him a traitor. He broke Billy out of custody, fought his way past the men sent to stop him, and disappeared before Cobra could react. By the time the alarms went off, the story was already spreading through the organization. Storm Shadow had turned against Cobra, and he had taken Cobra Commander's son with him. The two vanished. For a while, nobody knew where they had gone. The answer was hiding above the streets of New York City. Inside a massive rooftop water tower was a secret Arashikage dojo, hidden from almost everyone. It was there that Billy got his first real chance at a different life, away from Cobra, Away from Springfield, away from his father's shadow. Storm Shadow didn't try to turn him into a soldier. He tried to turn him into something better. The days were filled with training, discipline, patience, control. Billy learned Arashikage techniques. He learned how to fight. He learned how to observe. He learned how to think before he acted. But the most important lessons had nothing to do with combat. One day, a group of street thugs tried to provoke him. Months earlier, it probably would have ended in a fight. But Billy was changing. He stayed calm. The confrontation ended before it ever began. Later, Storm Shadow explained the lesson behind it. The more skill you have, the less you need to use it. For the first time in his life, Billy was being guided by someone who wasn't trying to manipulate him. Someone who wasn't trying to turn him into a weapon. Someone who wasn't asking him to serve an ideology. Storm Shadow was giving him something Cobra Commander never could. A path. And for a brief moment, it looked like it was working. Billy was finally starting to leave the past behind. Issue number 43. The Soft Master, one of the most senior members of the Arashikage clan, had gotten too close to the truth about who had destroyed the clan years earlier. He needed to be silenced before he reached the answer. Firefly gave the signal. Thumb down. Scrap Iron fired the first missile. The Soft Master threw himself in front of it to save the others. The second missile hit the vehicle where Billy was. When the smoke cleared, Billy had lost his right eye. He had lost part of his left leg. He slipped into a coma. If this video is showing you a story the cartoon never had the guts to tell, share it with someone who grew up watching G.I. Joe. Months later, a highway patrolman pulled over a man in civilian clothes with no coherent identification. Almost by accident, he mentioned a teenager in a nearby hospital, in a coma since an explosion. No visitors. The man in civilian clothes had a face no one in the world had ever seen, because he had spent his entire adult life behind a mask. He went to the hospital alone. He stood beside the bed, just a man standing in a silent hospital ward. There is no villain on those pages, just a father understanding the full weight of what he had chosen to build. Cobra Commander arranged for a prosthetic leg to replace the one Billy had lost in the crash. But what happened next surprised everyone around him. The first sign came when Billy lost his balance. Without thinking, without hesitation, his body reacted on its own. He instinctively dropped into an advanced Arashikage fighting stance, a technique he didn't even remember learning. It was the first clue that something was still buried beneath the surface. Little by little, fragments of memory began to return. A movement, a voice, a familiar sequence of commands spoken in Japanese. Then a face. As Billy watched students training, something deep inside him suddenly connected the pieces. The name came first, then the image. Storm Shadow. Determined to understand who he really was, Billy began searching for answers. That search eventually led him to the Blind Master and a young Arashikage warrior named Jinx. But instead of giving him the answers he wanted, they offered him a challenge, a test. The very same Arashikage test Storm Shadow had once given him years earlier. When Jinx struck, Billy reacted instantly. Not because he consciously remembered the technique, because his body remembered it. In a single motion, he blocked the attack exactly as he had before. And in that moment, another piece of the past came rushing back. For the first time since the accident, Billy realized that his memories weren't gone. They were still there, hidden, waiting, and the path that Storm Shadow had started him on was beginning to reveal itself once again. The body remembered what the mind hadn't recovered yet. It's the most honest thing Larry Hama ever wrote about what it means to survive a childhood like Billy's. The damage doesn't disappear, but what was taught well stays, even when everything else has been erased.